A very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much, Professor Dinesh Singh sir, for joining us today. It is indeed an honor and privilege for us that you have spared your time and have joined us in this on this memorable day. We also have with us our principal, Dr. Haritma Chopra, family and numerous friends of Dr. Savita Datta. Dr. Savita was friends and associates to so many of whom have already joined the meeting and the others will be joining in soon. I would just like to welcome a few of them. Dr. Shikha Sharma, the former treasurer and governing body member of our college, Professor J.S. Virdi, Professor Mridula Gupta, Professor Inakshi Sharma, Dr. Sanjeev Singh from University of Delhi South Campus, then Professor Vinay Gupta, Professor Amarjeet Kaur from Delhi University, and Professor Anil Grover and Professor A.K. Pandey will also be joining us soon. I wish to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Madhu Paya, who is the Joint Secretary of the Indian Women Scientists Association, Mumbai. We are happy to have amongst us the teaching and the non-teaching staff, students and alumni of Maitri, and students from faculty from other colleges and universities all across India, starting from Manipur to Kerala, Rajasthan, and Uttarakhand. I thank all the participants for their presence today. We have all gathered here to mark this day to reminisce our principal, Madam late Dr. Savita Datta, who will occupy a special place in our hearts, and to listen to one of the greatest orators, Honorable Professor Dinesh Singh. Sir, like I said, we are extremely grateful to you for adjusting your busy schedule to be with us all today. I now request Dr. Haritma Chopra, Principal, to formally welcome our guest.
Thank you so much, Poona. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you so much. Our honorable and respected chief guest, Professor Dinesh Singh ji, our invited guest for the day, distinguished faculty members, my dedicated and very committed non-teaching staff of the college, dear students, and all people who have joined from different parts of great Central University of Delhi and from the year 2010 to 2015. And today being a very special day because this happens to be the birthday of late Dr. Savita Mohan Datta. Had she been with us, we would have celebrated her 66th birthday today. But we know that even if she is no longer with us, but she is always there in our memories, and she is very much live with us in all the activities in which the college is engaged even at present. Because when I talk about her, I know that during her tenure, she joined in the Department of Physics. After serving for 20 years, then she took over the charge as the principal of Maitrey College in the year 2003. And during her tenure, Maitrey College achieved various milestones. Recognition of Maitrey College as a star college by the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, or accreditation or award of A grade by NAC are few of the feathers in her cap. And besides this, because she was a great administrator and she had a spark in herself. And this spark was very well identified and recognized and well appreciated by the University of Delhi. And she got the opportunity to work with 3 vice chancellors of Delhi University during her tenure. She was there with Professor Paintal. Then she was closely working with Professor Dinesh Singh ji during his tenure as the Vice Chancellor from 2010 to 2015. And then she also worked with Professor Yogesh Tyagi and introduced the course on journalism. And that is why we always say that she always believed in the holistic growth of the institution of the university and the work she carried out till her last breath. And we always remember her for her dedication and commitment towards work. And we feel very happy to state here that the college is still following the same trajectory, because in the year 2018, when the NIRF ranking was declared, our college was at position number 86. And then in the very next year, in 2019, the college made we observed exponential growth, and the college was ranked at number 38. And this year, in NIRF ranking 2020, the college is at number 35th position. And if I look at among the women colleges, now we are at number 8 among the top women colleges of India. So I feel, and I think that this is the best way that we could have extended our tribute to her by working in the direction the way she had thought of, because this was her dream that Maitrey College should be rated as one of the best colleges of Delhi University and India. And so I recommend and I acknowledge the commitment of all the stakeholders who are associated with this college for working in the direction so as to bring her dream to a reality. And today we have with us, because we have with us Professor Dinesh Kumar Singh, and despite his busy schedule, because he is holding such a prestigious position, but still he spared his valuable time. So we are indeed honored to have him with us. And since we all are into the space of education and being an academician, we always ponder that whether, as an India, are we moving in the right direction? And when we say right direction, because if you look at the statistics, if I go by the annual status of education report, that report says that the overall literacy rate in India is more than 75%. And now we know that the education has, for the age group 8 to 14, it has become a fundamental right. And when it is a fundamental right, and again, if you go by the statistics, it is observed that about more than 90% of the children in this age group are getting education. But is the education a quality education? Because the same survey also reveals that only 44% of the children in class 8 can solve a basic arithmetic problem. So even if we are very good on the numbers, but still the final outcome that we are looking at is not very rewarding. It means we need to do something. So what type of education should it be? Because the way things have been moving, and this situation, because of this pandemic, now we are at another state where we are not able to connect directly. We are on the virtual platforms, but we are sharing our thoughts, we are communicating with each other. This is the technology. But the question is, how many people in India are actually using this technology, and how many of them are actually getting benefited out of it? So there are so many questions that need to be answered, and maybe answers to these questions would certainly help us in charting our career, or maybe charting a direction, so that we can proceed. And maybe by the end of maybe another decade or so, India would emerge as the supreme power, and we as an academicians play a very important role in this. And when we thought about these things, because during this period everybody has been talking about this, and when we talk about, we think about this topic, then we cannot think of any other person better than Sir. And therefore, Sir, who is a great orator, a renowned mathematician, and that is why I was talking about these figures, because when I looked at it, and it is very sorry to say that only 44% of children in class 8 could do simple arithmetic problem. So, sir, we look up to you for the solutions, and maybe some steps that we can adopt, we may follow, so that we can make a positive contribution towards the nation building. And this is what we all actually are there for. And at this moment, I will take again, I would be very happy to share with you all that in the year 2015, Sir had visited our college
for laying the foundation stone of science block. And it is not a coincidence because that was one of the project which was very close to the heart of Dr. Savita Datta. And today, on the day of her birthday only, I have got the keys of the science block. So the college has finally taken the possession of this science block, and we so maybe this is another way by which we could express our gratitude towards her contribution that she has made in building up of this college and this institution at large. So, on the behalf of Maitre fraternity, I extend a very warm welcome to Sir, and I am hopeful that people, all those who have joined this session, would be highly benefited by Sir your valuable comments and your thought of wisdom. Thank you, Sir. Thank you so much for accepting our invite, and I welcome all the members to be a part of this, all the invited members to be a part of this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Haritma, for your wonderful words. And I'll add on to what you have said regarding Professor Dinesh Singh, the speaker for today. He's a very well known personality, and he's also an adjunct professor of mathematics and was earlier the professor of mathematics at University of Delhi. He is also the director of Mathematical Sciences Foundation, Delhi. He has been the recipient of various awards and honors, as you have mentioned. Some other ones being that he has been conferred with the honorary doctorates of University of Edinburgh, National University of Ireland, University of Houston, National Institute of Technology, and during 2011 to 2018, he was a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee, Union Cabinet Government of India. He has also been honored with the Career Award of the University Grants Commission. In addition to all these awards and honors, Professor Singh has served on the jury of the Gyanpith Award, one of India's most prestigious literary awards. Professor Dinesh Singh earned his bachelor's and master's degree in mathematics from St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, and he went on to obtain his PhD degree from the Imperial College of Science, Technology and Medicine, London, England. Very few also know that he is an excellent painter. An acclaimed public speaker and a student of Gandhian philosophy, he is avidly fond of literature in English, Hindi, and Urdu. Professor Singh is currently setting up a pioneering idea in education in the form of the Internet College and the College of Startups, and is also working on a book dealing with India in the 21st century. Sir, like we are repeatedly saying, we are indeed honored and humbled by your acceptance to be present on this occasion today to commemorate the birth anniversary of Dr. Savita Datta. Sir, we have put together a few glimpses of Dr. Savita's life in the form of a presentation, which will showcase some of the important milestones achieved in her life. Dr. Haritma Chopra has already given a beautiful review of her life, and we would also just like to present a 3 to 4 minute presentation on her life. We would like to take you all through the journey which was undertaken with devoted efforts and passion. Dr. Datta had so many unique attributes which made her extraordinary. Dr. Savita was one of three sisters and one brother. She joined Hindu College in 1971 to pursue BSc Honours Physics, went on to do her MSc with special papers on space physics and astrophysics from Delhi University, and then completed her PhD in atmospheric physics in 1984 from the Department of Physics and Astrophysics, Delhi University. Since childhood, she was an exceptionally bright, versatile, and multi talented personality, participating in various activities like debates, dance, and sports, both at school and college level. She was a bright, intelligent, and popular young woman with her classmates and fully enjoyed her student life at Hindu College. She was the first women Prime Minister of Hindu College in 1973 and was also minister in the earlier cabinets. Dr. Savita was married to Mr. Vinod Datta, a High Court advocate, and was blessed with two sons. Dr. Savita joined Maitri as a permanent faculty in 1983. While in college, she established the physics department from scratch with great zeal and dedication. For the department, she propagated the ideals of composite living, mutual tolerance, harmony, and brotherhood. She did her postdoctoral fellow in 1989 and became a reader in 1994. Her teaching span spread for over more than 40 years, beginning from 1976. Dr. Savita carried out multiple jobs simultaneously with equal ease and efficiency. During 98 to 2003, she did 5 years of PG teaching MIT at University of Delhi South Campus and was a visiting faculty member at the Institute of Informatics and Communication, Delhi University since 1998. During this duration, she also supervised 8 students for their PhD. In 2003, her talent was recognized by the university and she became the first woman principal of a co-educational college of Delhi University. She remained the principal of Deshbandhu College for over a year from May 2003 to October 2004. In October 2004, she came back to Maitri College as the principal. Principal Dr. Savita Datta's initiatives and efforts paved the path for imparting education by novel methods in Maitri. In 2010, a national conference on quality assurance, the first of its kind, was organized at Maitri. The college became a study center for IGNOU in 2005. In 2008, the postgraduate diploma course in nanotechnology was offered, again for the first time in an undergraduate college. Many short-term courses like those of journalism and web designing were also started from Maitri due to the initiatives taken by Dr. Savita. Under her patronage, many national conferences, seminars, and workshops were organized. With her impetus, the college was granted Star College Scheme by DBT in 2009, and considering the achievements, DBT granted star status to the college in 2013. The grant received from DBT helped develop hands-on components and enrich the library and labs. Various seminars, workshops were organized for all the stakeholders, the students, the non-teaching staff, and the teaching staff from time to time. As Dr. Haritma mentioned, the new science block was commissioned with her efforts, and Professor Dinesh Singh laid the foundation stone for it in 2015. And the foundation stone for the girls' hostel was laid in August 2016 by Professor Yogesh Tyagi, the Vice Chancellor of Delhi University. In 2006, Dr. Datta was given additional charge of Director COL. She professed that employability is a performance indicator for higher education institutions, and she worked devotedly towards this concept. The result was various projects like the supported blending learning project with Open University, Milton Keynes, UK, EMATS project with Edinburgh Telford College, employability and entrepreneurship with the University of Birmingham. Her efforts culminated in the introduction of 28 short-term courses at COL, and she was also associated with the Pan-African E-Network project. Dr. Datta possessed a good mix of interdisciplinary knowledge as principal and director SOL, with cross-cultural competency which culminated in the UKRI and the Pan-African projects. She was the coordinator of physics at IIIL Delhi University, and through her initiatives, a physics manual prepared by the physics teaching staff was released by the then Vice Chancellor, Professor Deepak Pental. The university authorities, while planning and constructing the important committees with balanced representation of members, always selected her as a competent member. These attributes were just perfect ingredients needed for designing a course in journalism, for which she was chosen by Professor Yogesh Tyagi, the Vice Chancellor of Delhi University. Her efforts of many years were recognized by Delhi University, and she was rewarded by conferring her with the Excellence Award on the 95th Foundation Day in May 2017. Many other awards to her credit, some awarded posthumously, do not acknowledge success. They recognize many other qualities like ability, effort, and above all, excellence. Dr. Savita was a person filled with passion and its obvious companion wisdom. She was soft spoken, and her impact always acted as a catalyst towards the improvement of education. We pay homage to her by promising to imbibe some of her many qualities and dedication for the upliftment of the college. Many, many thanks to all the distinguished guests and participants for being with us on this occasion. Professor Dinesh Singh, sir, Dr. Savita served the university under your able guidance and took initiatives that paved the way for innovative teaching at Maitri, and Maitri rose to greater heights. Sir, her achievements would have been incomplete without your encouragement and support. And sir, now we are all eagerly waiting for you to address our students and other participants on this special occasion with your knowledge and expertise in various fields, which will be a source of inspiration and motivation for all. Professor Dinesh Singh, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Juneja. I wish to thank Dr. Chopra for extending this invitation on this occasion when we remember and extol the virtues of a very dear friend and colleague, Dr. Savita Datta. I am indeed indebted to Maitri College for remembering me on this occasion so that I could also pay homage to Dr. Savita Datta. When Dr. Chopra was mentioning the activities and attributes that Dr. Datta was responsible for, and further taken by Dr. Juneja, memories kept flooding back in my mind about all those things in which Savita left a permanent, indelible mark. I do not know how many members of the audience today are aware of my close relationship with Savita Datta. Even though she was a little older than me, I always thought of her as a younger sister. I do not know why. We had a strong, unspoken bond. I met her when I was a professor at South Campus, and I became the chairman of the Institute of Informatics and Communication. And I was introduced to Savita Datta by my friend and colleague, Dr. Dinesh Singh, in his office. I still remember that day. She left an impact on me. I could see here is someone who thinks positively, is an optimist by nature, and is so cultured and knowledgeable. And from that day onwards, my relationship with Savita just grew stronger and stronger over time. I don't know if people here in the audience are aware that when Professor Paintal became the Vice Chancellor and he put Savita and me on the team, she was Director of Open Learning and I was the Director of the South Campus. Very often, on occasions when we could find time, Savita and I would sneak away for a short time to the hotel near college, near the university, Maidens. Sometimes we would have a cup of coffee there in silence, or maybe have lunch, share our thoughts and ideas, and we would come back and rejoin the activities of the university. It really helped both of us to take part in that surreptitious activity. We look forward any time when we could steal some moments and get away. Both of us could sound each other on our thoughts and ideas, and it helped, at least it helped me. Savita was so cultured and so polite, she would never complain. In all my interactions with her, I did not ever see Savita complain about anyone. I never saw Savita ever lose her cool. Never did she get angry. She was cultured to the core. But more importantly, she had extraordinary insights into education and administration. It is never easy to get a good combination of both these areas. You can be good at education, you can have good ideas on education, but you may fail to implement them. Or you may be very good at administration, but may have very little idea about education. Savita was that rare combination. And so all vice chancellors who came to work with her valued her greatly. And it is a great loss to this university and to the realm of education that we lost her prematurely. I will always cherish her memories, and this is my way of paying homage to the great soul that Savita Datta was. That is why I chose this topic, India in the 21st century, the role of education. India as a nation was very close to Savita's heart. She cared for the country, and her actions were always directed at watching how she could bring forward the platform of education to serve the nation. And she served in so many ways, as was mentioned by Dr. Chopra and then Dr. Juneja. So I chose this topic today to see how best we could evaluate and find ways and means to take those causes that were dear to Savita and that are important for India's journey in the 21st century. I want to sort of hark on this aspect of education and the role it can play in the growth of a nation. And I will go back and forth between different histories of different cultures and different nations and see how we could understand and reaffirm our faith in the principle that without education, a nation cannot really progress. And one of the most important lessons that we can imbibe is from India's history. And when I talk of India's history, I refer to facts of history that go back to well before the time of the Christ. So I am not sure if people here have that kind of interest in history, but it sometimes pays, is rewarding to delve a little into its history. In the context of India's history, we are all aware that Alexander came to invade India. And he went all the way up to the Beas River. So far, up to the Beas River, Alexander had never met defeat. History records that Alexander did not cross the Beas River. And I am digressing a little bit, but this is an important fact. Historians of the West have never really given us details on why Alexander did not cross the Beas River. But historical accounts from Indian sources give us very explicit reasons why Alexander did not cross the Beas River. So when he came up to the Beas River, he sent his spies across the river to see what was happening, because across the river were the boundaries of the powerful Magadhan Empire, which had never been defeated. And Alexander's spies crossed the river, looked around, found what they could, and came back. And they told him that there is an army across the river whose size is immeasurable, that there are more than 40,000 elephants, that thousands and thousands of cavalrymen, and foot soldiers who cannot be counted. And they told Alexander that the soldiers of the Magadhan army are waiting eagerly to give him battle. And at that point in time, Alexander realized that this was one battle he could not win and decided to turn back. As history records, Alexander was a disappointed man. He was keen to go beyond, but because of the power of the Magadhan Empire, he had to turn back, and he was very disappointed. And at that point, he had become friends with Porus. And as a parting gift, Porus gave Alexander several talons, ingots, blocks of the so-called woods steel of India. I'm not sure if the audience here or some of them may have heard, but generally we seem to be unaware of what the woods steel of India was. So Why was Alexander cheered up when Porus, on his return journey, gave Alexander several ingots of the wood's steel? Because this was the steel on the basis of which the famous Damascus sword, the Damascene talwar, as we say in Hindi, made its reputation. This steel, the wood's steel, was manufactured in India and in no other part of the world. Many countries, many nations, many scientists tried to imitate the process of the wood's steel, but they failed. This was a much sought after steel for many reasons. One of the reasons was that you could make outstanding swords which would not easily break in battle. And in Damascus, the steel was exported in great quantities from India. And in return, India got gold. The steel at Damascus was then forged into swords and exported to other parts of the world. India, in return, was getting gold. And there are records of historians of the West from those times who complain that we lose all our gold to India because we import so much from them. We imported this, they write that we import the steel, we import silk, we import other things, and India takes away our gold. What I'm trying to emphasize is that that is the power of a knowledge system. India had a thriving knowledge system dating back to hundreds and hundreds of years before the time of Jesus Christ. That knowledge system was serving the needs of the nation, of society. How? I gave you the example of the wood steel. We could make that steel in a special way. How could we do that? Because our education systems, our knowledge systems were extremely advanced and well developed, and they were connected to the needs and challenges of the nation and of society. So they served the cause of society by creating a way of fulfilling the needs of society, and society in turn became economically prosperous. The wood steel also served to make surgical implements. I am not sure if people here are aware. I learned about these facts that I'm about to reveal to you for the first time from Johns Hopkins University of the United States and then from Columbia University. Both of them are some of the leading universities of the world. In the field of medicine and health, they are easily amongst the best in the world. And at both these places, they have profound scholars of the history of medicine. And from these scholars and their written works, I discovered that India invented not only plastic surgery, but also cataract surgery. And that too, hundreds of years before the time of Jesus Christ. I could not find this in our historical accounts here. For some reason, they have been lost or discredited for all kinds of reasons that I'm unaware of. I also learned this from the researches and writings of a famous Russian historian, Alexander Nemirovsky, who writes about how India had mastered surgery and was the first in the world to introduce these kinds of surgery. Rest of the world learned from us. I have looked at the designs of the surgical instruments that were prescribed in those days. Extremely fine. I've seen instruments that are thinner than the thinnest hair. And how could we fabricate those instruments? Because we could manufacture the wood steel. And so when we exported the knowledge of surgery, the West learned plastic surgery, cataract surgery from India. And with this knowledge went our implements of surgery. So here is another instance of how a knowledge system, not just manufacturing good quality steel, but how to do great things in medicine and surgery using technology is illustrated by India's history. And that also in return brought two things. One, of course, wealth in the form of gold, but also respect for India's culture. Scholars all across the world. In those days, the world really meant China and the Western world. All of them respected India, and they used to visit India to learn. And they went back with great ideas. I can give you innumerable instances of how knowledge systems from our systems of education were helping society. I just gave you one example of the wood steel and another of medicine and surgery. But there are innumerable examples. Perhaps you may not be aware that Newton, one of the greatest scientists the world has ever known, in his time, he tells the British Parliament that at that point in time, and I'm quoting Newton, that at that point in time, he tells the British Parliament that science knows no means of determining position at sea. It is recorded in the proceedings of the British Parliament, what Newton has said. What Newton was unaware of was that for several hundred years before he made that statement, Indian navigators, Indian seamen had mastered the science and the art of determining position at sea. This is another illustration of how education and knowledge systems come to help a society. Let me tell you what the problem was. Why was Newton talking to the British Parliament? European ships used to forever try and find sea routes to other parts of the world. And to do that, you had to find ways and means of determining latitude at sea. And that was one area in which they were clueless. So almost all the time, European ships were in great danger. They would lose their way, get lost, get destroyed, and all the trade goods that they would carry so that they could bring back wealth to their nations would often get lost. So it was a matter of fundamental importance, not just for Britain, but for Italy, Spain, France, all those nations to find ways and means of determining position at sea. And here was India, already doing that for hundreds of years before Newton says we cannot do that. What were we doing in India? Let me just quickly illustrate to you. So I will illustrate in a more dramatic fashion. When I was a student in school here in India, I was taught through my history books and my teachers that Vasco da Gama from Portugal discovered the sea route to India. I learned from a Harvard historian in the 21st century, not before that. He told me that Vasco da Gama did not do anything to discover the sea route. Indian ships were sailing all the way to Africa and beyond, crossing the whole Indian Ocean without any error for hundreds of years before the time of Vasco da Gama. So what did Vasco da Gama do? Nothing. He hopped along the sea coast till he reached the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, picked up an Indian navigator from Gujarat by the name of Kana. Indian ships, as I told you, were forever docking there. And not from the time of Vasco da Gama, from since and before the time of Jesus Christ. How do I know that? Because hard historical evidence has just emerged a few years ago. There is a tiny island called Socotra off the coast of Africa. It was in the news recently because of a military coup there. That island is really tiny, hard to spot on a map. On that island, there are many caves. On the walls of the caves, archaeologists have discovered in Pali and Brahmi the scrawlings on the wall of the stories of Indian sailors that date back to well before the time of Jesus Christ. What are these stories? These are ordinary sailors. And what do they write there? They write about their journey from India, having crossed the Indian Ocean, stopped at Socotra to replenish their supplies of water and food, and move beyond to Africa and even along to Europe. How were they able to do that? These sailors are not great people. They're just ordinary people serving on the ships that were going out for trade from India. They were not warships. They are constantly recording ordinary experiences of their journey. There is no great thing about we got lost or this happened, or simple ordinary logs of what they were doing. Why was that happening? Because Indian ships, Indian knowledge systems had figured out how to determine position at sea. And so when Vasco da Gama turns up in Africa, he finds that it abounds with Indian ships and Indian navigators. They come there regularly, almost on a daily basis. So he picks up Kana, and Kana takes him straight from Africa across the Indian Ocean, straight into Kerala. How was Kana able to do that? Kana used an instrument known as the Rappel guy. Some people also call it the Kamal. This was an instrument based on a mathematical idea coming out of knowledge systems of India. And that Rappel guy allowed you to determine position at sea. When Vasco da Gama goes back to Portugal, he takes the Rappel guy with him. It is recorded in history. I could not learn this from historians in India. So I actually spoke to one of Portugal's most distinguished historians. And she told me, we teach this regularly in our history that that's all Vasco da Gama did. He did not discover the sea route. The sea route was known to India for centuries before his time. As I told you, is also now established by the writings in the walls of the caves in Sokoto. So here were knowledge systems in India, mathematically very developed, that were telling sailors how to find position at sea. And how could they do that? Because in India, mathematics and geometry and astronomy grew hand in hand. And from what time? From centuries before the time of Vasco da Gama, centuries before the time of even Jesus Christ. How do I know that? So there is a book written 200 years ago by the then Vice Chancellor of the University of Edinburgh. His name is Pat Robertson. The book talks about India as the ancients knew it, and the book is based on Greek and Latin sources. The book was written 200 years ago by the Vice Chancellor of the University of Edinburgh, which is amongst the top 15 universities of the world. Robertson was the most distinguished historian of his time in Britain when he writes the book. In that book, there is one chapter, and I have read the book. That book was gifted me personally when the University of Edinburgh gave me an honorary doctorate because they knew of my interest in history. And in that book, I have read personally a chapter in which they talk of a manuscript in Sanskrit that they come across from the Karnataka region of India. And the Vice Chancellor writes 200 years ago that that manuscript is obviously on astronomy. And because he doesn't know mathematics, he asks the mathematics professor of Edinburgh to help him decipher. And what do they learn? The first thing they learn is that it is a reading of the night sky on a particular night in Karnataka. The second thing they learn is that the reading has actually been taken on the day they say they have taken the reading. You can do that mathematically, you can establish that mathematically. So it is actually taken on the day the manuscript says the reading has been made, on that exact date. What was that date? It was 5,000 years ago. This is the Vice Chancellor of Edinburgh writing 200 years ago, based on his learning of the manuscript in Sanskrit. And then he writes that the mathematics that they used was the order of sophistication of spherical trigonometry. I'm sure those who have done little maths in school up to 9th or 10th grade would know what is plane trigonometry, two-dimensional trigonometry, where you discuss sine theta, cosine theta, stuff like that. This manuscript is using mathematics of the order of spherical, three-dimensional trigonometry. That is far more advanced, far more complicated. And that manuscript therefore understood in those days how to map the night sky and use that for navigation. So India was very advanced in astronomy, geometry, and therefore it could navigate the seas very well. And therefore our ships, which used to go out for trade, go to far off places and come back securely without losing their way and bring back wealth into India. That is how education, knowledge systems help the well-being of society and of nations. And this story continues uninterruptedly. If you look at this monumental work by Angus Maddison, one of the great economic historians of the last century, he has written this monumental treatise, The Economic History of the World from the 1st century AD till the beginnings of the 18th century. It is based on hard data. And he writes that for all those centuries, India dominates global GDP. And in the last 2 centuries, it is well ahead of China. And why was that? Because our systems of education were totally connected in a harmonious way, in a holistic way with society. That is the role that education, knowledge play in the well-being of a nation. Things began to go down when the British, not earlier, till the time the British come, India is doing well. In the first few years when the British come, India is still doing well. But then they systematically take apart 2 things. One, our own established institutions of knowledge, learning, etc. And more importantly, they do away with our self-confidence. And you can see that after that, they begin to plunder India and we begin to lose in the economic realm. There is hard data to tell us how we were damaged. I don't even want to go into all that. My point is that we must recognize that it is knowledge that through education inspires our youth, our citizens to do good around society. And now I come into the 20th and 21st century. And I want to tell you how education and knowledge have helped India even then. And this is India's story. It is in our DNA, in our genes. Sometimes we lose our way. But whenever we are reminded, as Mahatma Gandhi did in those times when the British had made sure that we had lost our soul, that we had lost our identity, that we had lost our self-confidence, he brought all that back into central focus. And Gandhiji understood this very well, that without education, India will not do well at all. And so he laid great emphasis. Very few people are aware how well versed he was in education. And Gandhiji never spoke about anything until he had learned enough through his own experiments. So in the matter of education, he first set up a school in South Africa, which he ran personally. Then when he came to India, he set up a full university in Ahmedabad that functions till today as a full-fledged university along Gandhian lines, Gujarat Vidyapeeth. When I ran my first Gyanodaya Express journey, in which Savita helped me greatly, that journey we sent 1,000 girls of the University of Delhi to many parts of India to explore and learn through first-hand interactive experiences about India. That is true education. What you do with your hands and what you see with your eyes and what you experience in such ways enlightens your heart and does things to your drumbeat. I will talk about that in a minute. But that journey started from Delhi, and the first place they visited was the Gujarat Vidyapeeth in Ahmedabad. And I remember when they returned, they went to many other places in many cities, learned and studied and interacted in many ways on projects. But when I spoke to the girls when they returned, so many of them told me how much their souls had been touched and transformed by what they saw at Gujarat Vidyapeeth. Gandhiji emphasized over there, and then later when he moved to Wardha in the heart of India, where he set up his ashram, he set up a polytechnic for women. And on the governing body of the polytechnic, he set India's foremost scientists, C.V. Raman, Bose, others. And we have this strange notion that Gandhiji was against science and technology. After all these experiments, what does Gandhi have to say? That in the matter of education, what you do with your hands will enter your heart. That is how you will do well. And so that is the principle that India had mastered, not from Gandhi's time, from times immemorial, all through India's history, in the matter of education, in the matter of knowledge, in the matter of applying knowledge to society, you will find that it is always connected to practical aims, and it is a two-way process. Skills and knowledge go hand in hand. One feeds on the other. Skills feed on knowledge. Knowledge derives from skills. And they go in parallel in India's history. That is why we could use those great ideas of chemistry, metallurgy, physics to invent the Wood's steel, to invent the Ruppel guy, to invent the calculus 500 years before the time of Isaac Newton, when Bhaskaracharya II in Ujjain in the 12th century invents the calculus. Why? Because India had understood the role that education plays, and they also understood what is true education. Our ancient school of philosophy, the Mimamsa school, says knowledge without action is meaningless. Knowledge must always be connected to the needs and challenges of society, and the two feed on each other, and India had mastered this. When we reach the 20th century, I know it is easy for us to blame the British. Gandhiji always said you must temper this with the knowledge that it was we who allowed the British to come and exploit us. And those are the things we must guard against. But let us not forget that they certainly managed to demoralize us. We were a demoralized nation. We were also deprived economically, and we had become extremely poor when the British left India. And yet, look at India's journey from the 20th century into the 21st. When I was a child, I remember some things so well. I remember there were always food shortages. We were heavily dependent on the Americans to give us low quality wheat that they used to use to feed their cattle there. But India had no wheat there. India was extremely deficient in the production of food grains. I also remember there was always perpetually a sugar shortage. It was almost impossible to get milk. It was so difficult to get milk. And even when you got the milk in my childhood, you never knew the quality of the milk. There were other kinds of shortages. We did not have enough good roads. We did not have good telecommunication systems. But you must also understand that India began to stand on its feet, and in that process, our education systems also began to do good. Because I keep saying that kuch bhi ho jaye, as Iqbal says so well, kuch baat hai कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं जहां से. There is something in us जो हमको बरकरार करके बनाए रखता है, गिरने नहीं देता. भारत बढ़ता रहेगा हमेशा, अनादिकाल से अनंत काल तक. और भारत की यात्रा में ज्ञान, विज्ञान, शिक्षा जुड़ी हुई है, उसकी आत्मा में समाई हुई है. मैं उसका ही प्रमाण देना चाहता हूं आज आपको. तो भारत की यात्रा में जब हमने इंस्टीट्यूशंस बनाना शुरू किया एजुकेशन के, when all these shortages were there, धीरे 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 all these bricks began to fall into place, and India began to do reasonably well. आज क्या परिस्थिति है? India is probably the largest producer of milk in the world today. In spite of the corona pandemic, India's milk production is going strong. India is one of the largest producers of wheat in the world. I remember in 2002, India experienced a huge drought in many parts. And do you know what happened in 2002? In spite of the drought, we had a bumper wheat crop in other parts of India, so much so that we did not know where to store the wheat. Where is this coming from? From our institutions of education, from our agricultural universities, even from the University of Delhi, where we have, I know there are colleagues in this audience here today from the South Campus who have done fundamental work in the life sciences, and that has helped India's march in the agricultural sciences. We have invented new varieties, and all this has contributed. So education plays a huge role. Education plays a huge role. Let me give you an example of how powerful an education system can be for a country. You know, Stanford University is located in California near San Francisco. It's not too far from San Francisco. Around Stanford University, there are several thousand companies, startups, and well established companies. Even Google comes out of Stanford University. All these companies are directly connected with education and knowledge coming straight out of Stanford University. I'm just giving you one example. This is true in many parts of the world and many parts of USA. I'm just picking one example of Stanford University. So Stanford University is directly connected, and it has given ideas which have helped create thousands of companies that are physically located around Stanford. Google is one of the prime examples. All of them are based on knowledge systems. And how do you judge the value of these companies? What kind of economic wealth do they bring? In 2012, there was a powerful committee that set about to study how Stanford had affected the economy of the local region. And you know what they said? That altogether the economic wealth of the companies there is more than $3 trillion. Just the location of Stanford and the region around it. More than $3 trillion. That is the power of a system of education. And I told you, even in India, why could we do so well in milk? Because our agricultural universities had begun to give better ideas, and we managed to manage things well. So we could put knowledge into these systems of milk production and good organizational skills. All of these come from knowledge systems. Korean was educated in India. He gave us those ideas. Our scientists who were educated in India gave us the Green Revolution. So knowledge plays a big role. If today, just a few months ago, India produced a hypersonic missile, very few nations have that missile which goes so many times more than the speed of sound. That is coming from our engineers who have studied in India. These are knowledge systems of India. So education plays a big role. Stanford University is not unique. You look at Cambridge University, they have played a similar role. So education is central to the well-being of the nation, and India has demonstrated that education plays a role. But that doesn't mean that we have arrived and we don't need to do anything else. There is so much more that needs to be done. Why do I say that? Well, simply because in the 21st century, there are other nations that are also making great progress. And 5 years ago, a Harvard professor and intellectual, Joseph Nye, he wrote a book, Is the American Century Over? Because by then, people had begun to talk that Brazil, India, China, Russia, all of them are making great advances, and probably the supremacy of the US will be destroyed. And so Joseph Nye makes a study and comes up with very interesting answers and indications. So he lists countries that could challenge the US in its supremacy as an economic power. And he says, he gives reasons why he feels China will not be able to do it, and gives some reasons. When he comes to India, he says that India also will not be able to challenge the US. And one of the principal reasons he says is that India's education systems are bad. They are not anywhere in the first 200 universities of the world. Today, I want my colleagues who are listening to me to think about this, to think carefully about this, that unless India puts its education system in order, we will never, in spite of all the progress, we will never really be reaching the top. I'm not saying this just because I've given you all these demonstrations and examples why this will not happen. So we need to be careful. And in that context, I want to say just two more things and I will finish. One, that those experiments that we ran at the University of Delhi in the 4-year undergraduate program gave us such good results. I don't know if you are aware, my friends and colleagues of this university who were with me on that journey together. There is nothing that I did. It is all of you who helped me do those things. And what happened? we had shot above all other universities in India in global rankings and also above all IITs except Kanpur and Bombay. In global rankings, we were nearing the 200 mark. And that would have been a great way of making sure that why was that happening? If we do our learnings, because we had introduced a system that was healthy combination of knowledge and skills and a lovely way of putting knowledge into action, and through that allowing each child, each student, a certain degree of freedom and flexibility to discover the drumbeats of their souls. हर एक आत्मा के अंदर एक ध्वनि होती है. मैं बार बार इस बात को दोहराता हूं, दोहराता रहूंगा जीवन पर्यंत. इसको कबीर ने बड़े खूबसूरती से कहा है, घट घट पंछी बोलता है, आपे डंडी आपे तराजू आपे बैठ तौलता है. वो अपने आत्मा की बात कर रहे हैं, उसके आवाज की बात कर रहे हैं. वो जो पंछी है, वो जो ध्वनि है, जो अंतर ध्वनि है, वो ईश्वर की आवाज है. जब तक कोई भी व्यक्ति विशेष उस अंतरात्मा की ध्वनि को नहीं पकड़ेगा, वो प्रशिक्षित नहीं हो सकता. प्रशिक्षित होना जीवन पर्यंत चलता है. यह यात्रा कभी समाप्त नहीं होती. बिरले ही कुछ हैं जिनको हम कह सकते हैं ईसा मसीह, भगवान बुद्ध, महात्मा गांधी, रामकृष्ण परमहंस, वैसे लोग हम कह सकते हैं कि प्रशिक्षित थे. हम लोग के लिए तो जीवन पर्यंत यात्रा चलेगी. परंतु इस अंतर्ध्वनि को, जिस पंछी की बात कबीर करते हैं, उसको पकड़ना अनिवार्य है, आवश्यक है. और हमने उस कार्यक्रम में किया था. हमारे पास रिकॉर्ड्स है, डेटा है. अभी कुछ दिन पहले मेरे पास सूचना आई है कि हमारे ही अंडर ग्रेजुएट्स ने उस काल में एक जो स्टार्टअप बनाया था, हमने उसमें स्टार्टअप्स के लिए प्रावधान किया था, उसके लिए उनको क्रेडिट मिलने वाली थी. उस स्टार्टअप को अमेरिका में $multi-million फंडिंग मिली है. अभी साउथ कैंपस में डॉक्टर संजीव सिंह गवाह है, मेरे और कॉलीग्स गवाह हैं. 50 करोड़ से अधिक के स्टार्टअप्स वहां पर चल रहे हैं, जो नॉलेज सोसाइटी स्टूडेंट्स को जोड़ रहे हैं. तो हमारे प्रयोग सफल थे आप लोगों की सहायता से, आप लोगों के प्रेरणा से. वही नए एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में भी बिठा लिया गया है. आज सविता होती तो उसके हृदय में कितना संतोष होता, क्योंकि मेरे साथ कंधा मिला के आगे चढ़ी थी वो, जब हमने 4 वर्षीय कार्यक्रम बनाया था. और वही नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में जड़ा गया है हर तरह से. मेरा तो अनुमान है कि शायद कॉमा फुल स्टॉप भी नहीं बदला गया है. और मैं स्वागत करता हूं, इसलिए नहीं कि मुझे घमंड या अहंकार है. मैंने पहले ही उद्घोषित किया है कि ये किसी एक का इल्हाम नहीं था कि एक दिन सवेरे मैं सो के उठा और कहा मैं 4 वर्षीय कार्यक्रम बनाना है. ये के पीछे कितने लोगों की युक्तियां थी, वर्षों का अनुभव था, कितनी गहरी सोच थी, इसको हम इस तरह से साक्षात बना सके थे. तो मैं यही दोहराना चाहता हूं कि इतिहास बताता है, विज्ञान बताता है, ज्ञान बताता है कि शिक्षा की संस्थाएं प्रशिक्षित ठीक से करना, जब तक हम उसको ठीक से नहीं बनाएंगे, भारत वह स्थान नहीं ग्रहण कर पाएगा जो उसका दायित्व है, जो उसका अधिकार है. Education should be a primary duty, and I am happy that the national education policy, right from school all the way to higher education, has taken this into account in a very creditable manner, and we at the University of Delhi should welcome this heartily. That is all I have to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful way of describing the entire journey of education in India. In fact, your knowledge and your command over history, philosophy, language, literature, everything is very much evident from the way you have interacted with all of us. And I would now like to ask the participants if they have any specific questions. You may either put them in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and directly ask the questions to sir.
Hello.
Yes, Sujasvi.
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. First of all, a very thanks to you, sir, for enlightening us and also sharing your views and also for making us aware about how India has contributed so much in science and technology in history. So my question is, that though the new education policy it will be implemented in a few years or in a few time, but still there is a rat race behind marks, and there is a rat race behind unhealthy competition, which also leads to some mental frustrations and some mental issues. How can we make sure that the education system which we are going to have now in our country will make sure that the students are learning at their own pace without any burdens, without any restrictions, and they'll be free to know what they want?
Ojasvi, are you a student or a teacher?
Sir, I'm a student. I'm
Okay.
I'm a physics
Good.
student.
So, Ojasvi, I just wish to emphasize, अगर आप अपने अंतरात्मा की आवाज को पकड़ लेंगे तो आपके अंदर धैर्य आ जाएगा, धीरज आ जाएगा। धीर बुद्धि के आधार पर आगे बढ़ेंगे तो कभी भी रैट रेस में नहीं पड़ेंगे। What we have to do in a system of education, we have to get every child, every student like you to look inside and discover the drumbeat of your soul, जैसे कि तेंदुलकर ने किया। वो तेंदुलकर के पास कोई एजुकेशन डिग्री नहीं है, पर कौन कहेगा कि वो प्रशिक्षित नहीं? कैसे? अंतर्ध्वनि थी, क्रिकेट खेलो, और उन्होंने उसी को पकड़ा और तन मन धन से, निष्ठा से उसके साथ जुड़ गए। आपने देखा कि वो कोई रैट रेस में पड़े थे, वो मिडिल क्लास बैकग्राउंड से थे, उनके माता पिता को भी चिंता हुई होगी कि भाई क्रिकेट के आधार पर खाए पिएगा कैसे, पर वो नहीं डगमगाए। रामानुजन भी नहीं डगमगाए, महात्मा गांधी भी नहीं डगमगाए। रामानुजन ने गणित की ध्वनि पकड़ ली थी, महात्मा गांधी ने सत्य की। भगवान बुद्ध ने अपनी ध्वनि पकड़ी थी, ईसा मसीह ने अपनी। माइकल फैराडे तो दूसरी कक्षा तक पढ़े थे, उसके आगे पढ़े ही नहीं, एंड ही बिकेम वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट साइंटिस्ट द वर्ल्ड हैज नोन, तो उन्होंने भी ध्वनि पकड़ ली। सो एन एजुकेशन सिस्टम मस्ट मेक श्योर कि आपको ऐसा अवसर मिले कि आप अपनी ध्वनि पकड़ लें। वो ध्वनि पकड़ने के लिए गांधी जी ने जो बात कही ना कि प्रैक्टिकल चीजों से जोड़िए नॉलेज को, तो तमाम ध्वनियों से आपका वास्ता होगा। उनमें से कोई और जब वो होगा तब आप और तब उसके अनुकूल कदम रखें, तब उसके अनुकूल कदम रखेंगे, तब आप अपने कदम को अपने ध्वनि से मिला के चलेंगे, दूसरे के कदम से नहीं जोड़ेंगे। वो रैट रेस तो तब होती है जब आप बगल वाले को देख रहे हैं कि वो क्या कर रहा है मैं भी करूंगा, वो नहीं होगा। हमारी जो 4 वर्षीय योजना थी उसमें हमने इसको डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करके दिया। आप शायद तब नहीं रही होंगी यहाँ पर छात्रा, पर हमने उसको प्रमाणित करके दिया है। और नई शिक्षा नीति को अगर उसी प्रकार से लागू किया जाएगा, इसको ठीक से लागू करना ही सबसे बड़ी चुनौती है। अगर उसको ठीक से लागू कर लिया तो आप उस रैट रेस के खतरे में नहीं पड़ेंगे, ऐसा मेरा अनुमान है।
Thank you, sir. Hope Ojasvi, your doubts and your questions have been answered. Any other participants who wishes to ask any question to sir? We must make use of this opportunity of directly interacting with such a great personality. And sir, you have very rightly said that patience is the key in discovering the drumbeat or our own drumbeat. Yes, Akhilesh, you want to ask something?
Sir. Yes, madam. Very good afternoon to all. Is it audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, sir. First of all, I would like to congratulate Honorable former Vice Chancellor, sir, of Delhi University, Dinesh Singh, sir, and I was feeling very great honor to be here listening a great lecture and about the education policies recently have been implemented in India, that is national education policy. Sir, I have one question for you. Do you feel that this education policy is going to bring the past glory of the Indian education system, which you have just explained in your lecture about the spherical geometries and astrophysics and astronomy, but astrophysical history was rich in India. So do you feel this national education policy is going to bring back the glory of the past historical glory of Indian education system?
राजेश भी, मैं एक चीज पे स्पष्ट करना चाहता हूँ कि जैसा गांधी जी ने भी कहा था, मैं नई बात नहीं कि पास्ट से हमें सिर्फ प्रेरणा लेनी चाहिए। पास्ट से हमें इस प्रकार नहीं उलझ जाना चाहिए कि उसी में हम घुस के और उससे दब जाए। तो मैं ये कभी नहीं कहूंगा कि पास्ट की ग्लोरी क्या है क्या नहीं, पास्ट से क्या सीखना है कि पास्ट में जो हमारा बीत चुका है काल, उसमें हमने क्या किया था। व्यवहारिकता, समाज की आवश्यकताएं और चुनौतियों से राष्ट्र को जोड़ा था, राष्ट्र की आवश्यकताओं को समझा था जो उस काल की थी, समाज की आवश्यकताओं से ज्ञान विज्ञान को जोड़ा था। इस सिद्धांत को अगर आप आज भी लेके चलेंगे, जैसा हमने 4 वर्षीय योजना में थोड़े ही देर में सिद्ध किया था, तो अपने आप ऊंचाइयां पकड़ने लगेंगे। ऊंचाइयां कब पकड़ी जाती हैं? जब आपका जो युवक है, जो युवा पीढ़ी है, वह प्रेरित हो जाए और उससे जुड़ जाए और राष्ट्र के हित में लग जाए। तो आपको इतना ही करना है। अगर हमें अपने अतीत से कुछ सीखना है तो यही सीखना है कि राष्ट्र की आज की चुनौतियां क्या है, आवश्यकताएं क्या है, शिक्षा, ज्ञान, विज्ञान को उसी के अनुकूल जोड़ना है। मैं उदाहरण देता हूं कि हम पता नहीं कब से हथियार सब बाहर से उनका आयात करते आ रहे हैं, अरबों हम रुपए हमारे चले जाते हैं, इतनी शिक्षा की संस्थाएं हैं, इतना गणित पढ़ाया जाता है। हर आईआईटी में, दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में एक विषय है फ्लूइड डायनेमिक्स। आप जानते हैं, मुझे आज तक एक छात्र नहीं मिला जिसको ये मुझे बता सके इस फ्लूइड डायनेमिक्स का व्यवहारिक उपयोग क्या है। उसको यह भी नहीं मालूम है कि इसी से हवाई जहाज बनाए जाते हैं, क्योंकि हम उसकी बात ही नहीं करते। तो अगर आपको ग्लोरी लेनी है तो इसमें व्यवहारिकता डालिए, जो कि नई शिक्षा नीति में बार बार दोहराया गया है, हमने भी सिद्ध किया था। तो फ्लूइड डायनेमिक्स और कंप्यूटर्स के आधार पर आप एयरक्राफ्ट मॉडलिंग करेंगे तो भारत वैसे ही जो जगह जगह जाता है और खरीद के हथियार लाता है, धीरे धीरे वो अपने आप खत्म हो जाएगा। तो आपके अंदर वैसे ही हर प्रकार से जो है गुण आने लगेंगे, ग्लोरी अपने आप मिल जाएगी। फिर कह रहा हूं, वही आज की चुनौती क्या है? हथियार की है, क्लाइमेट चेंज की है, पोल्यूशन की है, स्लम डेवलपमेंट की है, पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्टेशन की है। आपने पाठ्यक्रम को उसी से जोड़िए और ट्रांस डिसिप्लिनरी तरीके से जोड़िए, हैंड्स ऑन तरीके से जोड़िए, न्यू पेडागॉजी से जोड़िए, जिसमें हम हर वक्त ब्लैक बोर्ड पे नोट्स डिक्टेट ना कराएं। हमें बच्चों को प्रोजेक्ट में उलझाना चाहिए, बच्चों से सवाल पूछने की आदत डालना चाहिए, उनके अंदर आत्मविश्वास डालना चाहिए, ग्रुप्स में काम करने की पद्धति उनके अंदर आ जाए, तो आप देखिए वैसे ही भारत ऊपर उठ जाएगा।
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, in fact, your answer has inspired so many students who are writing in the chat box that they totally agree with you that the students should be given a chance to do hands-on work and develop their confidence. Thank you so much, sir. Any other questions, please?
Hello.
Yes, Ms. Hina.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
It was a very inspiring and very thoughtful talk. Sir, I want to ask that if we majorly focus on the practical aspects of the problem, then what should we do about theoretical research in pure sciences and arts and other subjects?
ये जो वर्ड है ना, क्षमा कीजिए हिना जी, ये जो वर्ड है ना, प्योर साइंस इज प्योर, ये भारत की देन नहीं है। और मैं आपको कुछ बताना चाहता हूं। मैं आपको 3 उदाहरण दे रहा हूं, 4, चलिए 4 लेता हूं, जिन्होंने विश्व के समाज, विश्व की यात्रा को बदल दिया एकदम। मैं 4 नाम बताता हूं, आइजैक न्यूटन, एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन, मेंडल और डार्विन। ये 4 नाम और तमाम है, मैं 4 दे रहा हूं। आप मानेंगे कि आइंस्टाइन ने जब जनरल रिलेटिविटी दिया तो दुनिया बदल गई, उसी से एटम बॉम्ब भी बना, उसी से एनर्जी आई, उससे क्वांटम मैकेनिक्स निकली, सब कुछ हुआ। शायद आपको नहीं मालूम है कि आइंस्टाइन व्यवहारिकता में निपुण थे। ये उनका जो ज्ञान आया ग्रेविटेशन वगैरह पे, वो कहां से आया आपको मालूम है? बचपन से वो मैग्नेट्स के साथ बहुत खेलते थे। और फिर उनके फादर की एक इलेक्ट्रिकल गुड्स की फैक्ट्री थी। जब उनको पीएचडी मिल गई और नौकरी नहीं मिल रही थी, फादर बीमार पड़ गए, फैक्ट्री नहीं चला पा रहे थे, तो आइंस्टाइन लगे फैक्ट्री मैनेज करने, और इतना बढ़िया तरीके से मैनेज करने लगे। वो खुद बैठते थे शॉप फ्लोर पे, वो भी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रोसेस में जुड़े थे इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेट्स के साथ, कि वो ही ऑलमोस्ट गिव अप हिज करियर इन फिजिक्स टू मैनेज द फैक्ट्री। वो तो फॉर्चुनेटली उनके फादर की तबीयत ठीक हो गई और वो वापस आ गए, तो आइंस्टाइन फिर चले गए फिजिक्स की दुनिया में। पर फिर भी आइंस्टाइन व्यवहारिकता से जुड़े रहे। आपको मालूम है उनके पास 50 से अधिक पैटेंट्स और इन्वेंशंस थे। दुनिया का सबसे पहला मॉडर्न सेफ रेफ्रिजरेटर, फ्रिज, आइंस्टाइन ने बनाया था। दुनिया का पहला ऑटोमेटिक कैमरा आइंस्टाइन का था। अब आप समझ रही है ना, कभी उन्होंने ये नहीं कहा कि ये प्योर साइंस है या अप्लाइड साइंस है। ज्ञान ज्ञान होता है। और मीमांसा क्या कहती है? नॉलेज विदाउट एक्शन। ये थोड़ी कह रही नॉलेज मत रखिए, एक्शन से जोड़े रखिए। आप डार्विन पे आ जाइए। अगर डार्विन अपने हाथों से दुनिया में भ्रमण कर करके पूरी दुनिया में जहाज पे गए थे, बीगल, हर जगह घुस के धरती से जुड़कर तमाम प्राणियों को देखना, सैंपल्स को देखना, कोरल्स को देखना, स्केलेटन्स को देखना, फॉसिल्स को देखना न करते तो थ्योरी बनती कैसे? उनकी बनती ही नहीं थ्योरी। इवोल्यूशन की थ्योरी तो वहां से आई। आप मेंडल को देख लीजिए। मेंडल को थियोरेटिकल नॉलेज थी, मैथमेटिक्स जानते थे, प्रोबेबिलिटी जानते थे, पर अगर अपने हाथों से वो पौधे न उगाते, अगर उनको बगीचे में काम करने का मन न लगता, इफ ही वाज नॉट अ गुड गार्डनर, तो जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन जो उन पौधों को उगाया, उनके फूलों के रंग जो उन्होंने देखे, तो वो तो प्रोबेबिलिटी तभी तो उस पर जोड़ पाया। अगेन नॉलेज इन एक्शन। और मैंने चौथा नाम किसका लिया था? न्यूटन का। न्यूटन हाथों के प्रयोग में निपुण थे। उन्होंने अपने हाथों से लाइट के जितने इक्विपमेंट थे सब बनाए थे, क्योंकि वो हाथ के प्रयोग में निपुण थे, प्रैक्टिकल बहुत थे। लाइट की एक्सपेरिमेंट्स उन्होंने अपने ही इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स बना के की। जब लाइट को ठीक से समझे, जहां से इनवर्स स्क्वायर लॉ बनाया उन्होंने, उसी से ग्रेविटेशन पे आए। आप देख रही हैं, व्यवहारिकता से थियरी पे गए हैं। मैं फिर कह रहा हूं कि ये दो तरफा मार्ग है, एक ही सिक्के के दो पहलू हैं। किसी एक से अकेले चलिएगा तो समझ लीजिए एक पहिए की गाड़ी होगी। आपको दोनों पहिए चाहिए या दोनों पहलू चाहिए। दैट्स व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from anyone? In fact, sir already has an appointment at 2 o'clock with another university. So if the participants have any specific questions, or you can write them in the chat box and we'll forward them to sir and request him to answer at his free time. So I think with that we can come to the end of the session. And I would like to request Dr. Ritu Dhingra to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Poonam. On behalf of the Physics Department, Maitrey College, it is my privilege to deliver a hearty vote of thanks. I express my deepest gratitude to our eminent speaker, Professor Dinesh Singh, for enlightening and motivating us by sharing his words of wisdom. We all are thankful to Dr. Shikha Sharma and Dr. Amarjeet Kaur for joining us today. We are grateful to Professor J.S. Vedvi, Department of Microbiology, Professor Inakshi Sharma, Professor Mridula Gupta, and Dr. Sanjeev Singh from University of Delhi South Campus for sparing valuable time from their busy schedules. Our sincere thanks are due to Ms. Madhu Pehwa, Joint Secretary, Indian Women Scientists Association, Mumbai, for gracing the occasion. We highly appreciate the presence of fellow faculty members of our college and various other colleges, Deshbandhu, Kalindi, Gargi, Keshav Mahavidyalay, Bhagini Navedita, Shivaji, Shahid Rajguru of Delhi University, and Pettigrew College, Ukhrul, Manipur. We are obliged to our principal, Dr. Chopra, for being a part of this program. Our thanks are due to all dignitaries also whose names I may have missed. We are also thankful to all the family members and friends of Dr. Savita Datta for sharing these moments with us. We are deeply indebted to the audience, including our dear students and alumni, for being a part of this remembrance and homage to our beloved Dr. Savita Datta. The active participation and enthusiasm of the inquisitive audience have made this program a great success. A big thank you to one and all who have been a part of the organizing team. Thanks once again to each and every one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you to all the participants. I hope you all filled up the feedback form, and your certificates will be mailed to you very soon. Please do fill up the feedback form. Thank you.